Paper Mario is a series that's very near and dear to my heart. It's also a series that, if you've been around the block, you've probably gotten tired of hearing about like years ago, so I'll try to keep this part brief. The first game in the series, shockingly titled Paper Mario, was a pseudo-sequel/reboot to Super Mario RPG with an all-new style, that is highly regarded to this day for its charm and sense of character, as well as its implementation of action commands into turn-based combat. Then 4 years later, it received what is widely considered to be a perfect sequel. Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door would be unleashed into the world, expanding and improving on almost every single aspect of the original, taking place in a weird new corner of Mario's world. Of course the art style was even better and more fully realized, the writing and characters all a massive improvement over the original's cast, except like Flurry, the story much more elaborate and engaging, the combat system infinitely more satisfying and fun, and the music, ooh, the music! However, what truly defined TTYD's greatness in the history books for all time is the fact that I played it when I was a kid. Yeah, this is probably gonna be one of those super biased videos, sorry in advance. Playing this game as a kid was a super formative experience for me. It helped define my tastes not only in games but in art and media in general, and it remains one of my favorite games even today. After Thousand Year Door, Nintendo would step away from the formula that made the first two games so beloved, and the series would go on a 20-year-long identity crisis, consisting of a complete genre shift with a genuinely great story but pretty weak gameplay. And then the series would focus more on the paper aesthetic, starting with Sticker Star, which is unfortunately Sticker Star. It then got a way better written but still unwanted sequel, and most recently, the latest original Paper Mario game, The Origami King, which was the most evolved form of new Paper Mario. Origami King honestly came close to rivaling Thousand Year Door's writing in both humor and heart, and it was an absolutely gorgeous game with a killer soundtrack. But its gameplay was once again its weakest aspect, and you could literally feel the developers trying to push against the heavy restrictions that were placed over what they could, or more importantly, could not do with Mario's world and characters. For many years, there was a lot of fan outcry for Paper Mario to go back to its turn-based RPG roots, and bring back the same kind of creativity that was seen in the earlier games. This kind of discussion would usually get pretty heated and just really unpleasant, which is why I think most people are pretty tired of hearing how great the old games were. Now, where was I during all of this? Honestly, I had pretty much given up. I thought Paper Mario, as I knew and loved it, was dead. And I did my best to still enjoy the newer releases for what they were. A part of me still quietly held on to hope that Paper Mario could one day make a comeback, though the odds seem slim. Until then, I would just stay in my little corner, playing Bug Fables or something. But you already know why we're here. In Nintendo's latest September Direct, they had one last miraculous announcement. I heard that music and saw that book open once again. And look, whether I screamed my lungs out and or had tears of joy streaming down my face that I kept pent up for years just for this occasion, that's not relevant. What mattered is that Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door was getting a full remake and it looked perfect. The wait until May 23rd felt like a millennia. This might sound wild talking about a waiting period of less than a year coming from a Hollow Knight fan, but for me, this wait was more than that. Thousand Year Door was one of the two games I wanted to get remade the most for the longest time, so to me it felt like I was waiting for this day for over a decade. The day has finally arrived and the game is finally out. I'll be talking about why I love the Thousand Year Door so much in the first place, as well as major differences and additions in the remake, without delving into spoilers of course. And hopefully, by the end of the video, I'll try to answer the question, does Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door still hold up? And how does the remake fare in comparison to the original? Let's get into it. I believe a premise synopsis is in order. After the events of the first Paper Mario, our second favorite plumber once again receives a letter from Princess Peach. containing a strange map along with an invitation to look for a legendary treasure in the faraway town of Rogueport. Once he arrives though, the princess is nowhere to be found, and instead he finds criminals, sailors, the mob, more criminals, Saturday morning cartoon villains, and Goombella, the best character, who he teams up with in search for the Thousand-Year Door, which is said to contain the aforementioned legendary treasure. Once they find it, the map sent by Princess Peach marks the spot of the first of this game's MacGuffins, the Crystal Stars. Mario will have to collect all 7 of them in order to break the seal keeping the fabled door closed, as well as try to find Princess Peach along the way. Now that sounds pretty par for the course for a Mario RPG, doesn't it? Like, of course Mario's gonna have to save the princess, you know, or fight a dragon, or befriend new partners, or be cursed by an ancient spirit, or team up with what are definitely not Pikmin, or get involved with the mafia and enroll in a wrestling tournament in order to become champion? Oh, and that was all from the first 3 chapters, by the way. Yeah, this is kind of a wacky-ass game, frankly, and it doesn't hide it either. It's almost kinda reminiscent of Earthbound in how unflinchingly weird it is, and just like Earthbound, it doesn't feel forced at all. It's got that GameCube-era quirkiness, which still shines through the remake since most of the script is completely unchanged, which is a very good thing. I love the Mario series, but this game has such a specific sense of character to it that I think is entirely unique even when compared to other Mario RPGs. Take for example this game's central hub, Rogueport. First thing you see when you get to town is a big old noose right in town square. And within minutes, you're getting mugged and sent to the sewers where you're assaulted just for passing by. Makes you wonder why normal people live here. Rent must be cheap. It's such a departure from other Mario hubs like Toad Town or even Toad Town. And Rogueport is just one of many fun and unusual areas. But what would these areas even be without unique and charming characters? I'm not even just talking partners or supporting cast. Everyone down to the NPCs in this game are so great. They have fun designs and personalities, and their dialogue usually changes every chapter, so you get a peek into their own stories going on while you're off on your quest. The writing in this game is seriously terrific. Even during the 1 or 2 weaker chapters in the game, it should still keep you interested and engaged, along with the gameplay, which we'll get to later. This game has its own brand of really sharp and humorous dialogue, and thankfully it also knows when to take itself seriously. And it's surprisingly impactful for a game about funny little paper guys. It even gets kinda dark sometimes, like here in Twilight Town, where every time the bell rings, someone gets turned into a pig. There's this family that hasn't eaten for days, so I give them a hot dog out of the kindness of my heart, naturally. Then the bell rings, and tragically the mother gets turned into a pig. 2 of the children are horrified, but the 3rd kid immediately contemplates a mom BLT? As a huge fan of the game's original localized script, I remember getting a little worried when a few strands of text seemed to have been changed, but after having finished the main story, I can assure you the game's original and distinctive identity still shines through its dialogue. But can the same be said for the visuals? It's time to talk presentation. A little bit of context here. The original game leaned into a storybook aesthetic while having unique character designs. And many felt that since then, the series had lost its way when the presentation became all about the paper gimmick, beginning with, yeah, that. Now, Color Splash and especially Origami King looked gorgeous, but they felt like the visual conclusion of that modern Paper Mario style. Having said all that, how does the remake fare? Well, you've been looking at it. I think it's positively breathtaking at times. The amount of polish and care that went into making every area and character look like they could reasonably be part of a pop-up book, while also respecting and adhering to the original art style? Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. Not only does the game go back to the white outline less smoother animation style of Thousand-Year Door, which I personally prefer over the choppier style shown in recent entries, but it even builds further on the original art style's charm in multiple ways. My favorite of which being just how many brand new animations, poses and expressions so many characters have now. This honestly feels like a nearly perfect fusion of everything that made Thousand-Year Door and Origami King look so good in their own rights, and it results in what I believe is the best Paper Mario has ever looked. And hey, speaking of a fusion between everything that made those 2 games work, you know what that might just apply to even more than the visuals? The music. Okay, so I'm a diehard fan of the original game's soundtrack. It's definitely in my top 5 of all time. So I knew there's no way I'd prefer every song in the remake over the original. So I tempered my expectations and made sure to come into the remake with an open mind regarding the remade songs. And yes, despite me still preferring the original songs in many cases, this remade soundtrack is an absolute blast. Hearing brand new official renditions of themes I grew up with was such a fun time, and they genuinely sound so good. There's even some that I actually found myself preferring to their 2004 counterparts, like the aforementioned Twilight Town, which I already loved a lot. It gets better though. There's a whole lot of all new tracks, including themes for every single partner, plenty of supporting characters, and many cutscene specific songs. But my favorite part of this new soundtrack are the brand new battle theme variations. Just like in Origami King, there's a variation of the main battle theme for every single chapter, sometimes even more than one. Have a listen. The music being as good as it is should not come as a surprise, seeing as the game's lead composer, Yoshito Sekigawa, was also lead composer for Origami King as well as co-composer for Thousand Year Door's original release. It's so clear to me that a lot of love and passion went into this new soundtrack, and I think they really nailed most of it. Even if I do prefer the original, mostly due to nostalgia. The best part is, if you'd rather just play with the original soundtrack, you can totally do that. Just buy the Nostalgic Tunes badge as early as the end of the prologue. Oh, and since I already mentioned badges, this seems like a good time to quickly go over the remake's gameplay. First of all, it's basically exactly the same as the original, and I wouldn't have it any other way. It is the aspect of Thousand Year Door that stood the test of time the best, especially since we haven't had another Mario game that plays like it for the last 20 years. But in case you haven't played the original, what is the gameplay actually like? Well, like in any other Paper Mario game, you can explore different areas in the overworld, but where this game shines brightest is in its combat system. This is a full-fledged turn-based RPG, but with a couple of twists. You'll fight enemies you bump into on a stage as Mario, along with a partner party member of your choice. Mario can jump or use his hammer to damage enemies, but to get the most out of your attacks, you're gonna want to time your button presses to each move's action command. Same goes for your partner's moves, and they each have different movesets that play completely differently. When it's your enemy's turn to attack, then it's your time to guard. You could press A just before getting hit to reduce some of the damage taken, or if you're really confident in your timing, you could try the super guard, basically a much more strictly timed guard that will negate all damage and counterattack. Only downside being that if you didn't time it correctly, you will take the full amount of damage of the attack. And those are just the very basics. There's so much more to this battle system. You could use an item for recovery, buffs, or even to damage the opponent, switch your partner mid-battle for someone else who would be right for the job, appeal to the audience to fill your star gauge, which then lets you use special moves that you unlock by collecting crystal stars. By having the charge badge, you can charge your next attack to deal more damage. Oh yeah, badges! They're the best. By equipping different badges, you can use attacks different from the basic ones that are more powerful or have different effects, at the cost of your FP, which is basically your mana. But some also give you passive traits, like gradual FP recovery, reduce even more damage from enemy attacks when you guard, or even beating weak enemies outside of combat if you land the first strike on them. Huh, another Earthbound similarity. Badges really contribute to the overall depth of battles. Let me give you a specific example. There's a line of Koopas here which can be knocked over by jumps, and there's a spiked Goomba at the end of the line which can't be jumped on. By using the multi-bounce badge, which lets Mario jump on all enemies in a row, but purposefully missing the last jump's action command, I managed to hit both Koopas without getting hurt myself, and then used Koops' power shell to finish off the Goomba in the back. And there's still so much more depth to the combat system. I haven't even gotten into stage events, or stylish moves, or the battle bingo, or how sometimes someone in the crowd can throw stuff at you, and you need to give them a good whack. Ooh, and of course special moves. Each one is basically their own little minigame. And of course you get XP, or rather star points, for winning battles. Get to 100 star points and Mario will level up. And every time he does, you get to choose whether to boost his HP, FP, or BP, which lets him equip more badges. BP is definitely worth upgrading, since it lets you customize your build and playstyle so much more. And don't worry, partners can be upgraded as well, by using shine sprites hidden in the overworld. Upgrading partners will not only boost their HP and damage output, but even unlock new moves for them, making them even more useful in future scraps. You know what? Partners deserve their own segment. They're a huge part of this game's heart and soul. They all have their own personalities, fighting styles, and even their own arcs. I won't spoil them all, so let's only go over the first few. There's Koops, a timid and clumsy Koopa who wants to become more courageous and defeat the dragon his father failed to. Madame Flurry, a kind of pompous but overall kind retired actress who wants to help the denizens of Boggly Woods in their time of need. You got the Yoshi partner, which actually can hatch in 7 different colors. I didn't want to aim for a specific color, but I happened to get my favorite, which is the red one. I named him Pepper. And of course, you got Goombella, my personal favorite partner. She's a junior student of archaeology and sass. You can use her ability to tattle about anywhere and anyone, and she'll always have something funny to say. In fact, you can even use tattle during battles to find out the enemy's stats and HP, which will stay permanently displayed for every additional enemy of that kind you'll face. I personally like to tattle everyone and everything. Filling my tattle log gives me the same kind of satisfaction as filling the Pokédex. Other partners have useful abilities in the overworld as well. Koops can activate switches or collect items with his shell, Flurry can blow things away with her wind powers to reveal secrets, you can ride Yoshi, in order to travel faster and use his flutter jump to cross large gaps. And that's only like the first half of the partners. Most of my favorites are actually the ones I won't show here in order to not spoil anything. Partners make for a really fun take on the classic JRPG party formula, but would it really be a JRPG without side quests? Or a cooking system? And what about minigames and gambling? Honestly, I'm low-key surprised the Pianta Parlor was kept in with only a few minor changes, since the Game Corner was never brought back in more recent Pokemon remakes. This is a pretty beefy RPG. Not Xenoblade or Dragon Quest levels beefy, but it's still a big game. With so much optional side content, I think you'll get as much out of this game as you're willing to put into it. Personally, I'm still working on finishing my cookbook. And there's so much I couldn't fit into this video, like the Pit of 100 Trials, or whatever Luigi's got going on, and some more fun surprises I won't spoil. But after all, this is a remake, so let's talk about what's new. Let's get this out of the way. There is some brand new content. Now, I won't show it here because I don't want to spoil the surprise, but I can say that I really enjoyed the new additions, even if they weren't plentiful, so just don't expect like a new story mode or something. What I can tell you about is all the quality of life changes the remake adds, like a quick partner swap ring, which may not sound like much, but it drastically improves the flow of gameplay on the field. They thankfully also managed to cut back on the backtracking quite a bit, which was probably the original game's most infamous aspect, and I'm very grateful for that, as it finally helped to make Chapter 4 one of my absolute favorites. And they didn't just fix it there either. The fast travel system has been really streamlined and improved, making an infamously tedious part in the original's late game basically painless. More quality of life features include the Battle Master, a toad that can help you practice battle mechanics if you're having a tough time, or optional hints from partners if you press ZL, just in case you don't know where to go or what to do. Ooh, an addition I really liked is every character and species having their own text bleep sounds. The game also incentivizes you to collect all shine sprites and star pieces, because they will now unlock a sound test menu, where you can listen to every song in the remake or the original game, and a concept art gallery, which I'm a very big fan of. But of course, no game nor remake is completely perfect. I do have just a few gripes with it. They honestly didn't ruin my enjoyment, but I think they're still worth pointing out. Most of the menus have been improved, but menu navigation in battle feels just a little bit slower. Usually that's not a problem, but when you're trying to blast through many battles in quick succession like in the pit, you could start feeling the difference. The text also can't be skipped or rewinded like in the original. Well, you can skip dialogue you've already read, but for a game as replayable as this, I think at least having the option to enable text skipping would have been nice. Come to think of it, Origami King had the same problem. You can, however, skip some cutscenes unlike in the original, like cooking or upgrading partners, which is very convenient. Oh right, sorry, this is the part of the video where I'm negative, right. Okay, this is gonna sound nitpicky as hell. I'm more than fine with most of the minor dialogue changes, but I really wish they hadn't changed end of chapter to cleared. It just feels a little anticlimactic this way. And while on the topic of nitpicks, I really wish there was a badge to also change the sound effects to the original GameCube ones. They left most of the iconic sound effects intact, like tattle or stylish. But I do miss the old crowd noises or the walking sound effects. One last thing about the visuals. The floor in some areas looks too shiny and reflective. I think it makes sense for places like the Glitz Pit, but less so for, say, Petal Meadows. Oh, you know what? One last thing for real this time. Most of the new soundtrack is amazing, but I really don't like the music for Glitzville. Maybe it's because I'm so nostalgic for the original theme and the new one goes for such a drastically different vibe that I just really couldn't get used to it. And yeah, I guess that's all of my gripes with the remake. Fine, I'll talk about the frame rate. Let's keep this brief. The original game ran at 60 FPS on the GameCube. It's in fact one of only 2 games in the series that did, along with Super Paper Mario. Due to the visuals on the Switch version being much more ambitious and higher res, the remake only runs at 30 FPS. Due to this, some fans labeled this a bad remake, or even inferior to the original release. My 2 cents? Well, let me just preface this by saying that yes, I would have definitely preferred if they could get it running at 60 FPS. However, as a huge fan of the original, I seriously don't think it's anywhere near that big of a deal. It's very clear that this framerate cut is a result of just how underpowered the Switch is, especially for games like this, where clearly so much care and polish went into every polygon and texture. This isn't the devs being lazy, and just as importantly, they actually adjusted the timing of action commands for 30 FPS. Personally, I've adjusted very quickly and didn't really think about it more than once or twice throughout my entire playthrough, honestly. I've been able to super guard pretty consistently, and heck, I even nailed both stylishes on my first jump. Despite the framerate cut, this still plays and feels like the Thousand Year Door. I'd even go as far as to say that the 30 FPS cap actually bothers me more when playing Paper Mario 64 than here. Now I'm not saying that being upset over the framerate drop isn't valid. Again, I would have taken 60 FPS over 30 in a heartbeat. I just think some fans might be blowing it a little out of proportion. This is a turn-based RPG. What I'm saying is, don't let the framerate cut deter you from picking this game up and giving it a shot. This is still Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door. Its inventive world, charming visuals, banger soundtrack, brilliant writing and addictive gameplay are all here, better than ever. And its rough edges have been all but completely smoothed out. It's my favorite Mario game of all time, and I wholeheartedly believe it is one of the very best RPGs to have ever come out of Nintendo. It's a very different kind of Mario game, one with its own distinct flavor and texture, which has been preserved and improved over the years like a fine bottle of Chocola-Cola. Yeah, that's cola. All in all, this is the definitive way to play the Thousand Year Door today. Now, does that mean it should serve as a replacement to the original? Well, personally I don't think that's a very fun way to look at art. Even if every change made was objectively for the better, which is literally impossible, I still wouldn't say it should replace it. Art is made of limitations after all. It would be like saying that the Mona Lisa is now obsolete because, there, I just improved it. Nevertheless, if you're going to play this game, and I highly suggest you do, go for this version. This is how you do a faithful remake. And now, as has been tradition in all one of my previous videos, it's tier list time. This time we'll be talking faithful remakes. Where does Thousand Year Door fit in? Will it go in C tier for just serviceable? Will it go in B tier for pretty good? Perhaps the coveted A tier? Well folks, if you've been paying attention this whole video, you already know it's going to be living it up in S tier with Link's Awakening. Thanks almost everyone for playing, drive safe and have a good night. Well, here we are again. Thank you so much for watching to the end, seriously. This game genuinely means so much to me. So knowing that someone out there was willing to listen to me yap about it for over 20 minutes, it's honestly kinda heartwarming. And if you want to hear me yap about stuff in the future, then feel free to stick around. I'm pretty sure there's a button down there that should help you do that. This video really took a lot of work and I'm really proud of it, even though it's not perfect. And I would love to keep making this kind of stuff. So yeah, until next time. Still no ending catchphrase. Whoops.